Mind is just a shadow. Attempts to catch it and control it are futile. They are just shadows chasing shadows. You can't control or eliminate a shadow by chasing it, or by putting a shadow hand on it. These are just children's games. Don't chase your shadow thoughts and your shadow mind with mind control techniques, because these techniques are also shadows. Instead, go back to the source of the shadow mind and stay there. When you abide in that place, you will be happy, and the desire to go chasing after shadow thoughts will no longer be there. Your mind is an insubstantial shadow that will follow you around wherever you go. Attempts to eliminate or control it cannot succeed while there is still a belief that the mind is real and that it is something that can be controlled by physical or mental activity. When self-realization happens, mind is no longer there. However, you do not get self-realization by getting rid of the mind. It happens when you understand and know that the mind never existed. It is the recognition of what is real and true, and the abandonment of mistaken ideas about the reality and substantiality of this ephemeral shadow you call the mind. That is why Bhagawan and many other teachers kept bringing up the analogy of the snake and the rope. If you mistake a rope on the ground for a snake, the snake only exists as an idea in your mind. That idea might cause you a lot of worry and anxiety, and you may waste a lot of mental energy wondering how to avoid the snake or kill it. But this fact remains: there is no snake outside your imagination. When you see the rope, the substratum upon which your false idea of a snake is superimposed, the idea that there is a snake and that it is real, instantly vanishes. It is not a real snake that has disappeared. The only thing that has disappeared is an erroneous idea. The substratum upon which the false idea of the mind has been superimposed is the self. When you see the mind, the self, the underlying substratum is not seen. It is hidden by a false but persistent idea. And conversely, when the self is seen, there is no mind. Don't be afraid of the mind. It's a false tiger, not a real one. Something that is not real cannot harm you. Fear and anxiety may come to you if you believe that there is a real tiger in your vicinity. Someone may be making tiger noises as a joke to make you afraid, but when they reveal themselves, all your fears go because you suddenly understand that there never was a tiger outside your imagination. You ask if one can have a temporary experience of the self, the underlying reality, but then it goes away. A lamp that is lit may blow out if the wind is strong. If you want to see it again, you have to relight it. But the self is not like this. It is not a flame that can be blown out by the passing winds of thoughts and desires. It is always bright, always shining, always there. If you are not aware of it, it means that you have put a curtain or a veil in front of it that blocks your view. Self does not hide itself behind a curtain. You are the one who puts the curtain there by believing in ideas that are not true. If the curtain parts and then closes again, it means that you are still believing in wrong ideas. If you have eradicated them completely, they will not reappear. While these ideas are covering up the self, you still need to do constant sadhana. The self does not need to stabilize itself. It is full and complete in itself. The mind can be stabilized or destabilized, but not the self. By strength of practice, by doing sadhana, this veil will be removed completely. There will be no further hindrances. You can go to the top of Arunachala, but if you are not alert, if you are not paying attention, you may slip. You have to make an enormous effort to realize the self. It is very easy to stop on the way and fall back into ignorance. At any moment, you can fall back. You have to make a strong, determined effort to remain on the peak when you first reach it. But eventually a time will come when you are fully established in the self. When that happens, you cannot fall. You have reached your destination, and no further efforts are required. But until that moment comes, constant sadhana is required. The jnani is not really aware of the body. Or if they are, they feel it like akasha, space itself. When I was walking on the hill with Bhagawan, he remarked, "I don't feel the weight of the body at all. I feel as if I'm walking weightlessly through the sky." I sometimes have that same feeling when I'm walking around. A jnani's vibrations stay even after they leave the body. All people leave vibrations in the places they have been and lived. Jnanis leave a good vibration, and bad people leave a bad vibration. I'm not talking about a gross physical phenomena that everyone can feel. The vibration that a jnani leaves is subtle. Radio broadcasts can only be heard if one has a radio that is tuned to the right frequency. You tune into a jnani's vibrations by having a quiet, still mind. This is the wavelength of the broadcast. If you have not tuned yourself to receive this frequency, you cannot expect to experience or benefit from the vibrations that a jnani may have left in a place. Everything that we perceive is Maya, an unreal dream. But one should not then think, since everything is unreal, I can do what I like. There are dream consequences for the bad acts committed in the dream. And while you still take the dream to be the reality, you will suffer the consequences of your bad behavior. Do no evil and have no hate. Have equanimity towards everything. Self-enquiry must be done continuously. It doesn't work if you regard it as a part-time activity. You may be doing something that doesn't hold your interest or attention, so you think, I will do some self-enquiry instead. This is never going to work. You may go 2 steps forward when you practice, but you go 5 steps backward when you stop your practice and go back to your worldly affairs. You must have a lifelong commitment to establish yourself in the reality. Your determination to succeed must be strong and firm, and it should manifest as continuous, not part-time effort. For many lifetimes, you have been immersed in ignorance. You are habituated to it. All your deeply rooted beliefs, all your patterns of behavior reinforce ignorance and strengthen the hold it has over you. This ignorance is so strong, so deeply enmeshed in all your psychological structures. It takes a massive effort over a long period of time to break free from it. The habits and beliefs that sustain it have to be challenged again and again. Ignorance is ignorance of the self, and to remove it, self-awareness is required. When you come to an awareness of the self, ignorance vanishes. If you don't lose contact with the self, ignorance can never arise. If there is darkness, you remove it by bringing light. Darkness is not something real and substantial that you have to dig out and throw away. It is just an absence of light, nothing more. When light is let into a dark room, the darkness is suddenly no longer there. It did not vanish gradually or go away piece by piece. It simply ceased to exist when the room became filled with light. This is just an analogy, because the self is not like other lights. It is not an object that you can either see or don't see. It is there all the time, shining as your own reality. If you refuse to acknowledge its existence, if you refuse to believe that it is there, you put yourself in an imaginary darkness. It is not a real darkness. It is just your own willful refusal to acknowledge that you are light itself. This self-inflicted ignorance is the darkness that has to be banished by the light of self-awareness. We have to repeatedly turn to the light of the self within until we become one with it. Bhagavan spoke about turning inwards to face the self. That is all that is needed. If we look outwards, we become entangled with objects and we lose awareness of the self shining within us. But when, by repeated practice, we gain the strength to keep our focus on the self within, we become one with it, and the darkness of self-ignorance vanishes. Then, even though we continue to live in this false and unreal body, we abide in an ocean of bliss that never fades or diminishes. This is not going to happen in a moment, because lifetimes of wrong and ignorant thinking have made it impossible for most of us to focus intently and regularly on the self within. If you leave your house and start walking away from it, and if you continue this habit over many lives, you will probably be a long, long way from home when you finally decide that you have had enough and that you want to go back to where you started from. Don't be discouraged by the length of the journey, and don't slacken in your efforts to get home. Turn 180 degrees to face the source of your outward journey, and keep moving back to where you started. Ignore the pain, the discomfort, and the frustration of seeming not to get anywhere. Keep moving back to your source, and don't let anything distract you on the way. Be like the river on its journey back to the sea. It doesn't stop, take diversions, or decide to flow uphill for a while. It doesn't become distracted. It just moves slowly and steadily back to the place its water originated from. And when the river dissolves in the ocean, river is no more. Only ocean remains. There is no happiness in separation. The individual jiva has no happiness, contentment, or peace so long as it remains a separate being. The separate being comes from the self. It has to go back there and end there. Only then will there be eternal peace. The energy of the mind comes from the self. In the waking state, the mind functions as a separate entity. In the sleep state, it goes back to the source. Again and again, it comes out and goes back. It does this because it doesn't know the truth of what it really is. It is the self, and self alone. But its ignorance of this fact makes it miserable. It is this feeling of separateness that gives rise to desires, suffering, and unhappiness. Keep the mind in the self. If you can do this, you can live in peace, both while you are awake and also while you are asleep. In deep sleep, all differences are dropped. If you keep the mind in the self during the waking state, there will also be no differences, no distinctions. You will see everything as your own self.